Thank you for joining us. You are a part of an elite group who recognizes that Black women's health should be at the forefront of the national conversation. We are mothers, daughters, activists, entrepreneurs, entertainers, corporate warriors, and more, who help boost the economy and often drive the national conversation. For 38 years, the Black Women's Health Imperative has strived to amplify our voices, help enact policy that protects us, research our issues, create programs that enhance our lives, and produce events like this one to ensure we keep the conversation going about the issues that matter to us most. So, let's get started with our program.
Good evening, everyone. My name is Monica Gail Coleman, and I am the Chief Communications Officer for the Black Women's Health Imperative. I know you are used to seeing our fearless leader, Linda Gola Blount, but she is on a much-needed vacation, so tonight you are stuck with me. So fortunately, we are discussing a really fun topic. I'm hoping that you guys will enjoy and that you'll get involved and you'll chat with us about this. So some of you may know that September is actually National Sex Health Month. So some people have been referring to it as Sextember. Not everybody, but a few of us. So World Sexual Health Day was actually September 4th, and the theme this year was around the 2020 observation of sexual pleasure in the times of COVID-19. And so tonight, we are so excited to have such different guests that are going to give us their perspective on sexual health. We're going to talk to a mom and daughter about how you have that conversation. We're going to talk to a sex therapist who has some really awesome credentials. I'm excited for you guys to hear from her. And we're going to talk to someone who is one of my favorite people, Billie Avery, who is actually the founder of the Black Women's Health Imperative. And one thing I can tell you is anytime you have a conversation with Billie or you hear from Billie, you learn from something, you laugh from something, and you feel inspired by something. So tonight, we really want to delve into this, and we really want to understand why is it that for some Black women, we feel so empowered to talk about social injustices, about disparities in health, about other issues. But when it comes to sex, that still is definitely for some of us a very taboo topic. And I unfortunately am one of those people. So my team laughed at me this week because they knew that I was kind of shy about doing this show, which is probably why I need to do this show, to make sure that I embrace all of my sexual energy and health. And I know that it's an amazing thing and I deserve sexual pleasure just like all of you do. So tonight we're going to start with a mother and daughter. We have Erica and Lauren Maxey coming on the screen first. So Erica is a lifestyle coach. She is a wife of 23 years. Go ahead, Erica, for 23 years in the saddle. And she has a daughter who is a college student who is 22 years old. She told me earlier, who is studying communications. Yay for the communications professional. So we also have tonight Renelle Nelson, who is a sex therapist. And as I said, we have Billie Avery, the founder of the Black Women's Health Imperative. So this show is supposed to be super interactive. So I do ask if you have questions, if you have comments, please make sure you drop them in the comments section, and we will gladly at the end bring all of our guests back to make sure that we answer your questions and we get you the sexual healing you need to make it through COVID-19. So Erica and Lauren, welcome. Thank you so much for joining us tonight. How are you?
Doing great.
Doing very well.
Thank you for having us.
Thank you for having us.
Great. So I can say I'm a mom. I have a 7-year-old, and I wish that she would stay 7 forever. But she's not. One day she's going to be a beautiful 20-something like your daughter is, and we're going to have conversations, I'm sure, long before 22. So, you know, for a lot of moms, that can be really awkward to have that conversation with their daughters. And it's sometimes if the mother has some hangups, she can be transferring those hangups to her daughter. So tell us a little bit about how you were able to have that talk with Lauren and do it in a way that was positive. And Lauren, you can make sure you fact check your mom if she's not being honest about how she had the conversation. Please let us know.
That is such a question, Monica. And, we have not talked about what we were going to share. So this is truly our
Oh, this is good. So we're getting the organic. Okay, I love this. Okay.
Organic. And so I don't recall exactly the first conversation, but I would say that it started at the very beginning that there was an awareness of her own body. Right? Just identifying, what the body parts are, what the functions are of the body parts. Right. And really allowing the child, in this case, for Lauren to really begin to ask me questions. But I will tell you from a mother's point of view, one thing that I observed, and Lauren, you may remember this, it was a New Year's Eve. And Lauren was all prettied up, and we were there with some of her girlfriends, and I was observing her, and I could tell that she had this crush on this boy. Do you remember that, Lauren?
Yes, I do.
And so this is where I believe the opportunity that I recall, one of the first opportunities, and believe it or not, she was around 7 years old, around the age of her daughter. Yes. And that was an open opportunity, because sometimes the question is always, when do you have the big talk? And you know what? Right. That conversation starts early, often, and should be open, just that open door where it's an evolution depending on the experiences of your child. Because we know that, for example, every 7-year-old is not going to have all the same experiences. Mm-hmm. And so in this case, it was an opportunity once I observed her, and I said, she really has a crush. Just the way she started acting a bit differently, I could tell. And so I didn't say anything at that time. In fact, I corrected her a little bit, observed, and then we did have a discussion. Do you recall that?
Yeah.
So Lauren, tell me about that discussion. What do you remember from that? And was there anything that your mom said in that moment that helped set the tone for how you guys talked about sex as you grew?
Honestly, so I remember like the gist of the conversation. It wasn't directly about sex, of course, because that wasn't a thought in my mind at the time, but it was more so about the, it was kind of not the, when two people love each other very much. It wasn't like that, but it was kind of, just a precursor to the bigger discussion. Right. It kind of set the tone for me that, okay, this is the beginning of, what is going to probably mature into different feelings later. And so, like my mom said, as I got older, the conversation definitely molded. It's like we dove in a little bit more depending on the situation and what I was going through at the time. So I don't think it was until I was probably 17 that we had the actual talk. Yeah.
And do you feel that was right on time for you, kind of in tune with what your mom said, just really paying attention to your child? So do you feel like 17 was right for you, or do you wish that you guys would have had that talk earlier?
No, I think it was right for me at the time, because it just wasn't really, it wasn't something that I was just, wasn't really thinking about sex that much in high school. So, which I know sounds kind of odd. It wasn't until, it wasn't until right before college that I was So it was actually right on time for me personally.
Right.
And I think that it was really informative. I think because I was a little bit older, we were able to be more open about it.
Sure. I see a comment from Facebook. Tanya Barnett said, I talked to my girls at young ages and made it normal to talk about their bodies and mine. And so before we let you go, Mom, I'd love to ask you, what is one tip you would give Black women about being comfortable, talking to our daughters about sex in a way that opens the lines of communication? And what would you tell us? Us, because I'm one of those moms. What would you tell us?
To first identify with our own sexuality.
Okay.
And that open, we come from sex, right? And so it's a difference between being secretive versus something that's sacred. And knowing the difference, Lauren may not recall, but we had ongoing conversations. And way before we had what she considers a talk, I was in a lot of talks myself, with those around me, my immediate circle, in terms of, how does this play out? Because a lot of times we put our own thoughts and fears and even our faith, of course, into our own experiences. And there's a lot around sex, particularly now with social media and how one learns. And so first, I would say the parents should be comfortable with their own sexuality, their own past, and then talk to those around their support system, understand their faith, and then have the open, honest, and often conversations throughout the child's life. From the moment that they become aware of their own bodies, open up that conversation and make it something that where the child does not feel so judged, that they can come to you first, because we all know there's so much to learn out there in the streets, right?
Yeah, definitely.
So we want our children to naturally lean towards us where they're not going to feel chastised or judged in any way.
I agree. And thank you, ladies, so much. I love the energy of your relationship. It's awesome. It inspires me that I'll get through the teenage years one day with my daughter. So we will probably bring you guys back later on in the show. So please stick around. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
So I see a comment from Diane Alvarez. She said, this topic was taboo in my house growing up, but I've made every effort to keep the door open for my 4 kids. And so, yes, it has been taboo, Diane, for many women, especially Black women. And so I'm glad we have Renelle Nelson here, a sex therapist, to talk to us. So before we get started, in our pre-call, you mentioned some special certifications and things that you have. So I want to be able to let you stunt a little bit on us. So give the people a little bit about who you are so that they know how blessed they are to be able to hear from you tonight.
Okay, hey, thanks for having me. My name is Renelle Nelson. I am a licensed marriage and family therapist. I'm an AASECT certified sex therapist, and I am an infidelity recovery strategist.
Oh, okay. We may dive into that a little bit. Infidelity recovery strategist. Okay. So in a recent article in Glamour magazine, the author said, exhausted, angry, and frustrated, I recently realized that there's only one situation in which I feel totally free of these feelings, and it is after orgasm. So in this reality that we're in, where people are isolated, people don't know what's happening next, people just don't know what is going on in one day to the next, we really are just in so much uncertainty that creates that anxiety. How important is it now how important is sex to our mental and physical health?
Not only sex is the act. So sexuality is so huge, and sex is just part of it, the intercourse. So one part of this is the knowing your sexuality, knowing all aspects of you who make you you. And then the next aspect is to really understand not only the sex, what gives you pleasure. Remember, intimacy is not sex. Know what intimacy is. Know what it means to you. What it means. Don't chase the orgasm. We want to feel good about the orgasm, because orgasms are awesome and they heal everything. It's just this chemical release. It's just awesome. But also, don't forget to ride the pleasure. What gives you pleasure? That's also relaxing. So this is what I've been teaching more and more during quarantine, is this is a time for you to get to understand yourself, not only your sexual pleasures, your intimate needs.
Right. So that's what you bring up, a good point about understanding your intimate needs. So I would say that for many couples, this was a time where when you're kind of stuck with each other, you have to, or you're paying more attention to what those needs are. So if you find yourself in a situation with a longtime partner and they're not meeting those intimate needs, what are some strategies that you can implement to have a conversation that's not going to necessarily hurt feelings, but really give you a chance to communicate?
Okay, so this is a time where you schedule pleasure. You schedule everything else. Why don't you schedule pleasure? Remember, intimacy starts outside the bedroom. So this is a time where you sit down and screen time, face-to-face time. I mean, face-to-face, no internet, no anything. And you really connect to your partner. Sometimes it's so many different cards that help with that. It's so many different avenues if you don't know the questions to ask. But the basic question to ask is, how are we doing? How can we improve? What would you like more of? How is our sex life? These are questions that's going to form more connection and build intimacy. To form intimacy, you would need to feel safe, right?
Right.
And to feel safe, you need to feel heard. So what part of being heard is conversating, being intimate with your partner and listening to what they want and what they need, and then sharing what you want and what you need. But the key to all of this is to know thyself, right? So I always say, go in before you go out. So before you have any of these conversations, sit with yourself and determine, what do you want, what do you need, what you desire, and then you don't teach your partner, you share with your partner.
That's a different way. So ladies and gentlemen, let's try to adapt that language. We're not teaching, we're sharing, because I guess if you say teach, then that can imply that someone is deficit maybe, and then that could,
it's like a hierarchy.
Right. Okay.
People feel defensive.
Absolutely. Yeah, I'm sure language really does play a role in that. And so when you talk about going in within, I know that for some women or some people in general, the idea of self-pleasure is still a little bit, not something that, not something they'll admit. But I remember when the pandemic first started and Amazon talked about how many orders for different toys they were processing and how that industry has gone up. It's definitely happening. And so, what would you say to people who still have some, hangups about that? Would you say that understanding yourself makes you a better lover, or what would you tell them to be able to get over the hump, so to speak?
And then, so it's the words we use. I will ask them that if you don't know or understand yourself, you can't assume somebody else will or teach you how to. So masturbation comes up a lot. I am a masturbation enthusiast. I really want you to understand your body, not only your biological needs, what you need for arousal. So I would say that even if you don't want to do far as going to orgasm to penetrate, play with yourself, or I don't like to say play with you, stimulate yourself. Also just know, look in the mirror, just see your body, love your flaws, love your vagina, love your vulva. Just look at it, because if you don't like it, if you don't love it, nobody else will. I really want people, just like, if you don't like masturbation, I was like, just know your body, know the names of the body parts, and know what makes you aroused. Again, so you can share with your partner. Some people are just really, masturbation is really a taboo. So I really just kind of say, okay, take away that orgasmic part of it and just have the educational part. Get a mirror, reintroduce yourself to yourself, right? You have to know what you're dealing with and working with. So when somebody says something, you're not like, you kind of understand what they're talking about. So if you want to go all the way and to masturbate, I really recommend it, because this is another way that you can educate your partner, share with them about what you like, instead of like a lot of women who fake orgasms and fake pleasure. Because women, especially Black women, we were taught to please, and we wasn't taught to receive pleasure. We are highly sexualized and idolized, but that part of us that we are supposed to give, receive pleasure, wasn't told to us. So this is a part that you can do it all yourself. You don't need validation. You're not a car. Do it all yourself. And baby, I'm telling you, you're going to be another high.
She said, do it all yourself, everybody. She said, know yourself before you want someone else to know. And I love that terminology. I think we'll all walk away with a different way we communicate with a partner. We're sharing, we're not teaching. It's about sharing. And so my final question for you is, okay, yes, so some people, they may please themselves, they may have a partner in the home, but what about those people who want to date, right? We're in the middle of a pandemic. They may want sexual pleasure from someone who's a new person. You know, in your profession, what are some of the things? We know what protection looks like from STDs and other diseases, but what are some strategies people can use to still date and engage in sexual experiences in a safe way during COVID?
This is the great time to establish intimacy, intercourse. So this is a time that when you meet somebody, you can do FaceTime and let them stimulate your mind.
Okay.
So intercourse, like intimately, like talk more about, see what arouses you, letting them feed your mind, visuals, talking. You can do more phone sex. You can do a lot of things to get to know each other, to build safety and trust. So when you do meet, it's more performance and no performance anxiety. Is more pleasurable. So I would say this would be a great time to get to know the person, you know, before you have the act. So what I say, communicate before coming. So this is the perfect time to communicate everything you want, you need, and your desire before you actually have that interaction.
Moment.
Yep. So then we know how with COVID everything, we know we're going to use protections. We have condoms, we have dental dams, we have female condoms, we have masks, we have a lot of things. Be creative. But I'm really going to say try to do something different and just do the intimacy. You know, get the intimacy up. Get to know them. How about that?
Right.
You know, let's put sex on the back burner. Let's pleasure each other by our company and our words. You know, so this would be a challenge to some, but in the long run, it's going to come out to a great benefit.
All right. Well, I definitely have learned a few things from you. I'm so excited that you are here. Thank you for speaking with us. There are some questions. I see Rosie McAnthony had, you know, some thoughts. So I'm definitely going to bring you back a little bit later in the show so we can take questions. So again, everyone, if you have questions or you have a thought, please make sure you're dropping them in the comment section so we can bring our experts back and you can get the answers that you need. So Raynell, thank you. We will bring you back shortly. And so I'm excited now to bring one of my favorites, Billy Avery, to the discussion. Hey, Billy.
Hello. Hi. What a wonderful discussion.
Billy is the founder of the Black Women's Health Imperative, and the reason that we are here today, Billy has the best stories about everything. I promise you. You can sit with Billy and just learn and laugh and just feel so inspired, like I said earlier.
Yeah.
And so, Billy, you have obviously, among many of the things that you know, the reasons why you founded the Imperative, I know that sexual health was one of them, and you've been a very vocal voice in that front. So, really, just tell us, you know, how from 38 years to now, what are some things that you would suggest to women to really be able to navigate their own sexuality and just some of society's expectations of what that really means?
Okay, well, you've heard some wonderful advice from Raynell as well as the mother-daughter team. I think just about everything that I would say along those lines, they actually said them, which I felt really very validated. So thank you very much. But I kind of want to shift the attention to talk a little bit. You know, sexuality, sexual preference, all of that exists on a continuum. You know, we go all the way from heterosexuality all the way to homosexuality, being gay. Not everybody is not everybody's straight, not everybody's gay. A lot of people are bisexual, and bisexuality is something that never gets talked about because it makes people feel uncomfortable. They want you to be on one side of the fence or on the other side of the fence. They don't want you on the middle of the fence. And so, but a lot of us are bisexual. In terms of myself, I was married. I had a husband. I have two wonderful children. I loved him. He was an incredible man. I had by some miracle, we had good sex. I didn't know what the heck it was because I was told nothing, but it happened so that we somehow bumbled through it and had a very good relationship. And then later on, I mean, my husband died. And later on, I think when I was around 42 or so, I had to come to terms with feelings that I was having for women. And it was like, oh my God, I didn't know what to do with them. I didn't know anybody to talk to. And it was the only time in my life that I felt like I was going a little bit crazy because I was going against every single thing that I've been taught in terms of social norms. What would my mother think? You know, am I going to lose all my friends? What's going to happen? And so it tried to stuff the feelings down, but you really can't stuff them down because if you stuff them down, they come out in very strange ways. And one of the best days of my life was the day that I decided that I was accepting who I am and I was going to stop worrying about what other people thought about me. And that included my mother. I had to get there in order to do it, but I felt whole. I felt centered. I felt actually very empowered, very empowered. And so I think that we have to broaden what we look at around sexuality, and sexual preference. And it really is okay. And for people to try to tell gay people you have to be straight, and just think if you're a straight person, somebody said, well, you have to be gay. And it doesn't work that way. It really doesn't. So we just need to open up our minds to that and be who you are and love who you are. Love yourself.
Absolutely. And I love the vein you're in about sexual confidence. And so I know for some young Black women, they're often, sexualized and considered to look or be more mature or sexually advanced. And that can create some hangups, I think, for women at a young age that they carry with them into adulthood. So I would ask you, you just shared about being able to be in your truth. Right. What are some things that you would recommend to younger women who are now starting to come into whatever feelings they may have about being more sexually confident?
Well, one of the things I want to talk about that to all women is that through our work with the Black Women's Health Imperative, what I have learned is that many of us, many Black women, many women are victims of sexual abuse, incest, and rapes, and all of these things. They get in the way of you being able to access your power. Because the negative feelings that come from being a victim of sexual abuse are very, very intense. And like a lot of young girls, they're being messed with by their uncles, by their brothers, by all of them. They go and tell their mothers. A lot of the mothers had the same kind of abuse. They grew up with it. And when they told their mothers, they didn't believe them, or they told them, oh, you'll grow out of it. Oh, when you get old enough, you'll leave home. Oh, you'll leave. But you carry those scars. Just like you say, you carry those scars. And so if you have had these kind of behaviors done to you, you got to deal with your negative feelings, the feelings that you have around that. You got to get rid of those feelings. You need to go, some you might not be able to do it on your own. Go find you a therapist and talk to. Or find you a group of people who are working on incest issues. Kind of hard now with COVID, but you need to unhook from that. And we need to stop that cycle from going on from generation to generation. This is a family problem. Incest is a family problem. And we were not put here on earth to be messed with by anybody. And so what happens with young girls, young Black girls, especially now, taking all these powerful prenatal vitamins and all, we come into our own, they start around, sorry, Monica, 7, 8, 9, they get their period, their body starts to mature, and people start to trying to sexualize these children. That is in the eye of the beholder. Your daughter is a 7 or 8 year old girl playing with her dolls.
Mm-hmm.
And because her breasts are coming and her body is forming does not mean that she knows or thinks or anything about having any kind of sexual feelings.
Right.
But people look at them and say, oh, they look so mature. They must be. No. I'm sorry. You don't have permission to even have those thoughts. And we don't need to have to tolerate that. And we don't have to put up with that. You can't tell a child who's playing with a doll at age 7 or 8, she gets her period and they say, now you're a woman. No. It does not work like that. And to put that kind of pressure on young girls is just something that shouldn't happen. So mothers and fathers need to be on the lookout for this. And not let their daughters be drawn into this trap by mostly men who act out of disrespect, and it's them who see it. You see what I'm saying? And so we need to really get on this, because these young girls are not sexualized. They just young girls having a body, trying to grow up to be something or whatever they want to do in their life. They're just growing up.
Mm-hmm. So it sounds like before there's any sexual healing for a lot of young women, there needs to be some emotional healing from some of that trauma. I mean, it is traumatic. I have friends and people I love dearly who I know went through it at the hands of uncles and people. So there's definitely some self-healing that comes before you can even explore a healthy sex life. So as always, Billie, I'm going to keep you on, and I want us to bring back our other guests now for a few questions that we've gotten. So right now I'll start with you. And as we do this, I would love for others to weigh in. One of the things that came in the chat was, I've been told that if you masturbate too much, it will be hard for you, for your significant other to please you because you like the way you please yourself more.
Oh my God.
So should we be too concerned about making ourselves feel too good? Is that going to cause a problem in the home? Have you seen that in any of the work that you've done? Uh-oh, you're muted.
One thing you have to understand, when you introduce anything into your partner, it's the point that you're sharing it with them. So one thing is, you can never masturbate too much or too much pleasure. One thing you can do, if you want to alternate the ways that you do masturbate, to sometimes use a toy, sometimes use your hand, or sometimes involve your partner. That's a way that you can encourage and let them be a part of it. But as far as overstimulation, I do recommend sometimes switching it up, because our bodies, we're machines. You know, sometimes I do recommend some of my ladies who take a little bit longer to orgasm based on their criteria, not on their science of their body. I do recommend like a novelty, like a vibrator or something like that. But that's just to get that blood flow going. And then sometimes they finish off with their hand. So then to cover that, you can just incorporate that with your partner. So long story short, I don't think you can orgasm too much. I recommend, in scientific fact, 3 to 5 orgasms a day. I'm sorry, not a day. That's just me.
I was gonna say, I don't know how you can fit that in between all these Zoom calls. All day
make that Zoom call so much better. But you know what? I recommend 2 to 3 times a week of orgasm. Remember, it's your sexual health. Don't think of orgasms as pleasure. Think of it as sexual health. Remember, that's your reproductive. You either use it or lose it. So get that organs working, get those juices running. Lubrication, as you go older, we know that your vulva and vaginal area changes. So please, please, please don't think about masturbation as just as pleasure. Think about it is your sexual health.
Lose it or use it. Use it or lose it. Okay. Billie, did you have anything to add there?
No, I don't think there's too much masturbation at all. She's absolutely right. The orgasm, I don't know about 3 a day, but three a week sounds good. And also for us older women, that's the challenge. Personally, that I deal with as an older woman, having a very, very active sex life as a younger woman. And I had a good time with men and women. So, it's like with a man, and I'm not going to act like I had a whole bunch of people. I had one man. but, it's just really, and as you get older, things change. So you need to figure out and change up how do you continue to pleasure yourself, and I once had a friend whose mother was in the nursing home, and her mother said, just seeing, holding somebody's hand gives me sexual pleasure. So things will change as you age, and you need to be able to change with them and keep seeking.
So I saw a comment come up in the chat about introducing masturbation earlier to younger women. And so, Erica and Lauren, I did want to ask you, did you have sex ed in school? Did you feel that it was informative? Did you feel it was restrictive? And what are some things that you would say to moms and daughters in terms of augmenting what they're learning in school with information that will actually really help? And I think everybody can weigh in here, because I think for some, the conversation around sex obviously is different when you're talking to teenagers versus talking to adults. And maybe you guys don't feel that way. So it would be really good to hear how we make that conversation make sense for our younger women.
Yeah, well, I don't know what's going on with sex ed in today's schools. I would say that it's not enough. That's something that I believe should be at home. I want to open up that conversations that mothers, parents alike should definitely talk to their children and be responsible for setting that educational standard and intimacy into UIC. We really have to continue that conversation with ourselves. And when we talk about things like sitting with my daughter and talking about masturbation and pleasuring ourselves and all, that's typically not how we roll. A lot of us, my generation, I don't mind saying I'm 49, I'm gonna be 49 next week. And these were not typical conversations. But one of the things, me being in the fitness industry, is that sexual health is such an important topic. Such an important, and I thank Billy for founding this initiative, Black Women's Initiative, Health Initiative, for 38 years. This is so important. So yes, sex education should be a topic that starts when the child is small.
Right.
We need to talk more about what the body parts are.
Right.
They function, allow the child to ask questions, because they are inquisitive. They're just not inquisitive about Legos, right? And their video games. They're inquisitive about their bodies and how it functions. But if they feel cut off, they're going to get that information from somewhere. So my daughter sitting here and us talking about masturbation, yes, I have masturbated, yes, and it is something that we want to talk about. And it's important to know first how to pleasure oneself.
Absolutely.
And then when it comes to my husband, how to share that experience. How do you think she got here? Right. And so we have to have these kind of conversations and make it comfortable. And I know she may not be feeling, I don't know how she's feeling right now. Maybe she wants to tell you how she's feeling. But when I was asked about us being on this show, yeah, it was, I was like, okay, that's out of my comfort zone, but an opportunity, and so Lauren, what do you think about sexual education? Did you have sexual education? You did, didn't you?
Yeah, so I had sex ed I was in a Christian homeschool program, but it was about, in high school, about 100 kids. So we did have sex ed, and it was more informative than I thought it was going to be. It did talk a lot about STDs and sexual health, but it did not really touch on sexuality. It didn't touch on masturbation. It didn't really touch on abuse. It didn't touch on sexual harassment. So I do think that in schools, it is important to have a thorough sex education curriculum, because sex is such a prevalent topic, not just topic, it's prevalent just, in everyday life. So I think that it's important to have a healthy foundation at home, have that understanding, of feeling safe to have the conversation, to ask questions, and to express your sexuality. But I also think it's important in schools to have, an alternate, because some people, even if your parents are understanding, you still might not want to go to them and talk about it. So I think it's important in school to have that outlet as well, to, have teachers, sex education teachers that you feel comfortable going to.
Laura, my experience was like yours when I went to Hampton University. And I remember when we got there, part of our initial sex ed was they showed us on the big screen in our auditorium pictures of genitalia with STDs on them. And that was that was one of their tactics, if you will, for sex ed. So I totally agree that a more well-rounded conversation is definitely warranted. And so we are getting to a close. Raynell, I would love some final thoughts from you and from you, Billy. Anything you want to leave our viewers with tonight about sexual health, and especially now in this environment we're all trying to navigate?
I would just like to leave a final thought. Like I always say, communicate before coming. I really would also like for you to understand your needs. I would like to talk about self-intimacy. We always talk about the intimacy between two people, but we never talk about our own self-intimacy. I would encourage everybody during this time with quarantine, or just not being by yourself, but with yourself, sit with yourself and see what your needs are, see what your desires are, see what your arousals are, see what excites you and what doesn't. Also talk about your betrayals. What does it mean to betray you? Because that's all part of intimacy. So I would encourage everybody during this time, before you go out, go in and know thyself first.
Absolutely.
Anything from you, Billy?
Yes, I would like to say that in speaking on the terms of sex education in school, I think sex information that's given in schools is good, but it needs to be paired with parents talking, especially mothers and fathers. And I mean, they don't talk about feelings. And a big part of sex is feelings. And, they want to know, Mama, what did you do when you got all hot and feeling heavy? And they want to know, how did you handle it? And so we have to get prepared for that. So that is important. And I really like Raynell's emphasis on, this is a time you at home. A lot of people are isolating. I mean, they are quarantined in isolation. What a beautiful time. Pour you up some bath water, put you some candles in the bathtub, get some oil, put you on some Luther, whatever you on. I mean, put that stuff on. Just create yourself and go and have a party. Get you a glass of wine and get relaxed, step out of your tub. Get in your warm bed, with your sex toys or your fingers or your mirror or whatever you have, and say, this is my day for me. And just enjoy it. And you just might get to those 3 orgasms a day. Who knows?
It's possible. Who knows? Well, ladies, thank you so much for being here with us tonight. And I learned so much. I'm sure everyone from our viewers have learned so much. If you want to get in touch with any of these dynamic women, if you go to our social media, which is BLK Women's Health on Instagram, and Black Women's Health on Facebook, we have tagged all of them in our posts. So feel free to reach out, get a little bit more. I feel like we need to bring Raynell back for her infidelity recovery specialist knowledge, because that is something that I think can impact relationships and just so many other things. So I'm so excited to have you here, and thank all of you for your time this evening.
Oh, thank you.
And on behalf of the Black Women's Health Imperative and our CEO, Linda Gola-Blount, who is probably somewhere having wine, playing tennis, or enjoying herself. Thank you so much for joining us. I hope after this discussion, if nothing else stuck out to you, the concept of self-care stuck out to you at the Black Women's Health Imperative. That is one thing, whether it's about your sexual health, your emotional health, or any health, we want you to take care of you. So make sure that you are doing that. Make sure that you are, as our guest said, going within first before you go without, and making sure you have what you need to be your best self. I am Monica Gail Coleman with the Black Women's Health Imperative. And until next time, please remain Black and well. Have a good evening, everyone.